say something funny. Tell us about your iced tea.
It's not funny. It's delicious.
Tell us what it tastes like.
Like Thai iced tea. I don't know what else to tell you.
Oh, Thai.
It doesn't taste like carrots.
Thai coffee.
No, it's not Thai coffee. It's Thai iced tea.
Yeah.
It's very good though. It's my favorite. I don't prefer Whoopies is okay.
What do you?
There's a spot in Darien called Little Thai Kitchen.
Ooh.
Probably my favorite Thai iced tea.
What do they do different?
I don't know. I just like it better.
Stronger?
Yeah, it's a little bit stronger. So I love it.
Stronger in what way? Like flavor wise?
Yeah.
Because like I feel like caffeine wise, it wouldn't be much of a difference.
No. But like the flavor it's more of a
Is it
punch.
authentic? Do you think
Yeah.
that's a
No, I think
syrup?
no, I don't think so. I think they're both authentic.
Cool?
Yeah.
Maybe just different areas.
Different areas
Thailand.
of Thailand.
Ah, yeah.
Or maybe they use like rather than like a tea bag, they use like loose leaf tea.
Maybe.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
'cause then you really pack it in.
That's a legit way, you know?
Yeah, it's for real. So, Vanesiah, thanks for being here on our podcast.
Sure thing.
We're excited to have you. And Andres, are you excited?
Am I excited that Vanesiah's on the podcast? Of course I am.
yeah.
I'm super pumped. Get to work with her, get to be friends with her. It's an awesome time. She got a lot of good insight.
Yes, that's why she's here.
Hopefully.
That is why she's here. Not hopefully, Vanesiah. Not hopefully.
You came in today supposedly all fiery.
I was very fiery.
She was
this
very
morning.
fiery.
I was.
She almost-
I recognized it.
She almost yelled down the room. I don't know if that's possible.
I was on the floor. Let's just say that.
Yeah, she literally
Fingers were pointing.
she clapped her hands and everything. It was
Really?
a lot. Yeah.
I did. Not every
Just
day
fired
that
up.
I do that.
Because like, so is that like a Gen Z terminology? Because we're gonna be talking about Gen Z today a little bit, but like Gen Z wise, like on the floor, I imagine you were probably like crawling.
I wasn't crawling. I was just getting on my knees for the point of emphasis to my point, and also not just having a hard time expressing how
How angry
deeply
you
I
were,
feel,
how passionate you feel.
how passionate I feel about the topic.
Did you do like drama in high school?
Yes. I was a drama kid.
What else did you do in high school, Van?
I was in student ministry. No, not student ministry. Student council, class council, because those are two different things.
Whoa.
Don't ask me why. Marching band, jazz band, jazz choir, a cappella choir,
Did your acapella group have like a punny name?
stoccatos, because I'm from Stoughton, Massachusetts. I'm not from there, but I lived there for a while.
Right.
Staccato.
All right, and give us the instrument you played in marching band and the instrument you played in jazz band.
Trombone for both.
For both?
Just imagine Vanesiah.
I know. And I would have to to get to certain spots, I would have to really lunge and not look like I was struggling to get to my spot. But obviously everyone else's, their steps are average and mine were. And then, it was just tough now. So I was back marching.
If there was how there's pickup basketball and stuff that you could just go do at the Y. If they had pickup marching band anywhere, would you be down to jump in?
I don't think I would be down to jump. It's a big commitment, So I would want to give it my all and memorize and all that stuff. And I don't know. I have considered doing a community orchestra or something.
That's cool.
Or a community band, but again,
with all the extra time you have in
with
your
all the extra time that I have and the trombone that I have.
Right.
Yeah. So I gave my trombone away to my sisters, and now they're
sweet.
learning it.
You could steal it back.
Elementary. You're right. When I'm there, I could just pick it up. And in COVID,
I heard Zach's looking for a trombonist for the worship team.
I don't think so. Sunday morning, though. Traditional.
That's right. Traditional
Hey.
service.
They do have spaces there.
Find Vanesiah with the trombone.
So, Vanesiah, there's something that happens every podcast that people just happen to know about, where they bring a gift to the podcast to leave behind.
Yeah.
You didn't bring one today because we didn't tell you about it.
Yeah.
So I was hoping that you can give us the everlasting gift of music.
Oh.
Would you sing something for us for a gift?
Wow.
Oh.
That's really intense.
That was crazy.
That's a big ask.
Yeah. Just a little thing.
A little ditty.
What's something you sing to
because
yourself?
We're talking about drama.
Ooh.
Guys, one time I was in a musical called You're in Town. You're in town about public urination. And I was Miss Pennywise. I was Miss Pennywise.
Like the clown?
Kind of, but the
different.
female version in a different setting.
Oh.
No, I wasn't scary.
Is it like the Marvel universe?
But I had to belt, and it was a lot of fun.
So are you going to belt for us?
I don't know if I'm going to belt. Zach's looking at me like, you better not. I don't remember. I don't know if I know all the words, but I'm going to try.
Nice.
Let it rip.
Here we go. How do we start here? I'm trying to remember the lyrics.
Lyrics are the
You
words.
could just start by
Name
humming.
of the songs. Oh yeah. For the privilege to be the politicians and their wisdom thought there should be a law. The politicians and their da 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 da.
Wow.
For the privilege to be.
That's the most important part.
Yeah. It's the best I got.
That was great. We're going to print out the lyrics and put
For
them
the
on our...
privilege.
Thank you.
to pee.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
the privilege
ourselves.
to pee. You're in town.
What year?
You're in town.
What year was that?
That she did it or that the play came out?
That she did it.
No.
It was 2016.
You're in town, 2016.
Dan was
Stoughton,
there.
Massachusetts. Dan was there.
And
love
some of
that.
my leaders.
All right, last thing before we get down to some serious business.
Amen.
I heard a rumor that you kickbox.
I used to. I took a boxing class for like 8 weeks.
What was the goal to train to fight somebody?
It was to have some self-defense, to see what I could do, to learn some technique on fighting, and have fun.
What are the chances of like you beating Andres in a legitimate fight?
Oh, she'd win.
Ooh,
After
in
that
a
training.
legitimate fight?
Yeah, like you guys were in a boxing
After the
ring.
training?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I could take you.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think I could take you. For sure. I feel like way more confident in my actual punch because I got the technique down.
What about
and how
the
to use
kicks?
my body. Oh, the kicks? There was a little bit of kickboxing in there.
Okay.
There weren't as many.
You're more confident in your punches then.
Definitely.
Yeah, I
and
mean-
how to utilize my body, my tiny body. Bah! Good stuff.
That's hilarious. Well, did you do that in Connecticut or was that before you
I was
moved?
in Connecticut.
Nice. You gonna go back?
It's too expensive to do consistently, but
Bummer.
I'm going to try to find a gym that has one. Like
She
a-
just uses her husband Dan as a
yeah,
puncher.
I do,
Yeah.
I do.
Well, keep
He's
us
great.
updated because it'd be cool to do like after you have your first amateur fight to have you back and do like a play-by-play watching the fight and talk about
Put it
it.
on the big screen.
That'd
Yeah,
be
it'd be fun.
crazy.
That'd be fun. But the whole reason why, not the whole reason why, a major reason why we have you here today is because we want to talk about some generational stuff. This morning you came in all fiery talking about generational stuff. And then also Andres and I had just talked to a bunch of our global partners about Gen Z. And I am not a Gen Zer, I'm a millennial. And so I know for me, a lot of times when we were talking to like Gen X and boomers,
Yeah, there's some boomers in the room.
yeah. And I feel like oftentimes looking at Gen Z, even as a millennial, we're pretty close, but I've grown up and it still kind of feels like that us and them type deal.
Yeah.
And so I wanted like your perspective and Andres' perspective because he's on the cusp of Gen Z.
I am.
You're a hybrid.
I'm a hybrid. They call us zillennials.
Ooh,
Oh,
that's cool.
Notice how it's mostly millennial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. It's millennials.
So you're mostly millennial with a little bit of Z at the
A
beginning.
little bit of Z at the beginning.
A little bit. A little spice.
But I feel like getting a Gen Zer's perspective is really helpful for anybody who's not in it because we get the insider's perspective. We love that when it comes like business things or like missions things. Where we love hearing from the people who are on the field.
Yeah.
And you're someone who's right there. You've been there your whole life. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your
Literally.
perspective on stuff. Yeah. But you also come from a little bit of a different perspective while being in Gen Z because you're already married.
Yeah.
So, can you give us kind of like your story because I hear like the dating scene for Gen Z is really, really difficult. And it seems like you almost caught like the last helicopter out of Nam type of deal.
Yes.
You know?
That's funny.
Yeah.
Where, like all chaos broke out. So tell us about like being married and being like a Gen Zer and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So Dan and I, we met in high school, in our high school youth group, and we didn't really have any intentions to dating each other. We actually, in the same friend group, kind of hung out. We're in the same bubble, kind of on Sundays. Went to church, served together. We're in the same kind of groups. But, when we actually decided to date, we kind of had this conversation of, let's talk with our mentors. Let's talk with the people who are older and wiser. And, we were very acquainted with our leaders at that point. And they were like, hey, as long as you put Jesus at the center. And we had heard, obviously always date to marry. Don't waste your time. Honestly, don't, fool around. This is, valuable stuff, but also understanding the point of dating and the point of even just eventually dating to marry, being that like you want a partner that's going to push you closer to Christ and be with you in that. And that was something that I valued a ton in my friendship with Dan and saw him do consistently in the lives of those in our group, but also like younger, and even some older people around us, that he was never ashamed to just call people out and just push them to like love Jesus more with their everything, and like share his unpopular opinion about social media, and like even, push us to be like, why are you on social media? Like, what are you getting from it? And like, he would ask questions like that were like, so unlike a 16, 17-year-old, but that was something that just like really caught my eye, and was something I just appreciated and kind of noted, and was like with my time with the Lord and figuring out, okay, what do I want in that? Like if that's something that the Lord has for me, I want to have these expectations for what, he would want for me, what God would want for me. And that was a big thing, is accountability and just someone who's willing to push me to become more like Jesus. And so we dated for a few years. We did long distance, and that really took us into kind of like what it means to sustain a relationship and communicate and all those great things, but also like keeping Christ at the center. And, we also were experiencing our first years in college, and managing that was tricky at times too, because it's like, okay, well, I gotta stay, I'm committed to Dan, and I want to make sure he's still a priority, but also we wanted to make sure that we weren't taking away from the experience of being there and honoring the community that we were a part of and all those things. But ultimately, when it came down to the decision to get married, it wasn't necessarily a question of if, but more so when we were like 3 years in. And we kind of had a conversation one night of like, what does that look like? What does the timeline look like? And we prayed, and the Lord kind of put on our heart a year from that time, which was 2020, which is a crazy year. That summer anyhow, he said he kind of was like leading us in a year. And before that, he was softening our hearts towards the idea, because Dan never wanted to get married in college, and I was kind of indifferent to a certain point. I remember God taking me through a process of like, yeah, you want that, but also, are you ready? And, through like wise counsel and things like that, and doing therapy as well, helped me work through a lot of just like my emotional things that I had to kind of work through with Jesus as well, to prepare to going into marriage. But anywho, sorry, lose my train of thought. We were praying. God called us, was putting a year from that point on our hearts. And up to that point, he was softening us to prepare us for what that would look like. But ultimately, it was because Jesus called us to do it. It wasn't necessarily like, hey, like you're dating, just kind of having fun. It was like, no, from the very beginning, that was something that we were intended to kind of our end goal, and doing everything we could to kind of steward our relationship up to that point. But ultimately, it was God's calling and God's timing to bring that about. And that's part of, the reason why we decided to get married. And even being so young, like I mentioned, Dan was a little bit hesitant to that idea. And again, God kind of worked with me like, trust him. Trust that, like, when he's good and he's ready, that was me and that he's leading. And that when he's kind of ready for that, and like, I will make that known, and you can trust that. Trust my leadership, and Dan is kind of what I sensed God was speaking to me through people, through his word. And then he also, God placed him on for his first year of college in a dorm surrounded by other guys, but his dorm mate was someone who was dating someone, and in the course of that first semester, God was really laying on his heart to propose to his girlfriend. And so he kind of watched the ins and outs of that, and kind of Dan was confronted with the ideas that our world and society has around like engagement and marriage, and how like blown up they are, and saw what it looked like in a God honoring way. And not that those aren't God honoring, but just saw it in a realistic way of like, oh, we're college students, so we can have like a low key wedding, engagement, all those things. And so the realistic ways of, seeing marriage beyond and proposals beyond what, the world or society would kind of present it as like, oh, this is the person I'm choosing to, do life with and follow Jesus with. And that's what it's about. Right. And so, and the image, and that's when God was kind of leading us to other resources and people who, again, came alongside us and taught us what marriage really, like a Christ-centered, God-honoring marriage could and would look like. And all those fears around like the finances and all the different, external aspects, God kind of just reassured them like, hey, but that's what I'm here for. I got you. Like, you don't have to figure out, you don't have to assume the world or the weight of the world on your shoulders. That like, I'll lead you and I'll provide. And that's kind of from that point of praying and seeking God on the timeline. That's where we kind of sense, okay, God, if you're calling us to this, then you're going to provide. And we saw God provide in tremendous ways leading up to that, our wedding in 2021. So
that's crazy. So speaking about just Christians, not like people outside the church, why do you think that the story of you and Dan and the story of Dan's roommate isn't more common among Gen Z?
Well, we've kind of known that there's like been this subliminal, like, I don't really want to commit. I want to keep my options open. There always could be something better on the outside of this commitment that I'm making. But I think we have for lack of better words, like a fluffy idea of what relationships and marriage is supposed to be, and what it actually is. And I think we put too much emphasis on things that are not as important, the non-essentials, as opposed to the essentials, like the core. Like, oh yeah, he follows Jesus. He really loves Jesus. He pushes me to love God more. He wants to honor him in everything. And so I think, part of the reason why it's not as common is because our eyes aren't on necessarily what Jesus sees marriage or relationships as. It's really on what we want and what's our preference. And I think that's part of it, because I love Dan for who he is, but again, it's the parts of those core things about who he is, about following Jesus, like the way he looks like Jesus, that blesses me a ton and pushes me to be more like him. So more like Christ anyhow. So I think that's why we want to hold on to our options, and it's not a bad thing. And with boundaries, within, in Christ, like in seeking God's perspective above our own, I think. Yeah.
So, something like that, an outsider, like a millennial like me, who I also got married young, I'm like looking at, there's like a bunch of Christian Gen Z singles, and I'm like, there's girls that are really lonely, or women that are really lonely, and men who are really lonely. It's like, I just want to like put them together. It's like, you guys look like you're happy now, right? So, but that's like, this is an issue. This is something that I've heard Gen X people say, millennials say, I've said it. So it's like, your friends that are also like your fellow Gen Zers, like, what's the inside scoop with that? Does that make sense? I don't know if, like, I'm just saying, like, it's like, I know that's like offensive to say, right? Because it's like, I wouldn't want to just get matched up with someone random, but
yeah. I guess like what's going on behind the scenes of like why they're not interacting with each other? Is that the question, or what are what's the hesitation there?
Yeah, I guess because like like I grew up like you date everybody. like that's how, like, I had professors in college that were like, there is Christian college. They're like, date all your friends. They're like, take all your friends out on dates. How else are you supposed to know if you're going to be interested in each other unless you take each other out on dates? And so it's like, that was what was normal. It's like, we just took our friends out on dates. You just give it a try. Right. So I just like want to know from your perspective, why there's not more relationships blossoming in like the Christian world, especially because like, you know, the Christian world, we always saw like short engagements and like marrying young, but that's not happening anymore.
Right. I think the hesitation is also in, we don't know, like they don't know these guys. And so it feels like you have to know everything about them and, you know, have all your fears eradicated before kind of jumping in even to that dating stage. And like obviously there are a ton of other stages before the dating stage now, as we see, you know, like the talking stage and then the situationship, which I think is lame.
The situationship?
Just throw that out there. Yeah, the situationship.
Can you explain that?
It's just that like we're hanging out, we're kind of going on dates, we're kind of exclusive, but like maybe not. And it's just question marks all around it. And I don't understand how people go from situationship to dating either.
You don't. You just go into another situationship. Sorry.
So exhausting. But I think the reason is that they lack knowledge of who these people are, and they don't do anything really to get to know them outside of like potentially having a crush or thinking that they're good looking, or there's nothing, but like they don't know anything about their character. On either end, I think, for guys and girls, whatever. They don't know about them. They don't know enough about them. So they'll go to their friends and then, you know, they'll talk about it. And like, maybe the friends will have an inside scoop on who they are. But like, I think it's kind of in those friendship groups that like you get a sense of who people are. But I think that's where the hesitation is a little bit, like the fear of the unknown. Like, I don't really know them. And then we also have minds that create their own like narratives and things that like, well, they blinked this kind of way, so I want nothing to do with them. I'm like, how could you?
I didn't mean to make this all about relationships because we're not here to talk about.
Yeah.
No, like that was me. I was just curious. You know, I figured I could pick your brain while you're here, but we had you here for more than just relationships. That was just. I didn't mean to make you a relationship guru. Yeah.
Listen, I love talking about relationships. We can go there.
While you're here, I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
I think too, just to add on to what Van's saying, I think something that we don't think about when we're looking at this generation as well. It's just the statistics that surround marriage and what a lot of this generation has seen from marriages. A lot of it has been watching parents end up in divorce, watching aunts and uncles end up in divorce, as well as like, it's pretty sucky, but like the fact that like the rate for like secular marriages to end up in divorce, I think years ago, I don't know what it is right now, it was 50%. And the rate for Christian marriages is 50%. Like there's not much of a difference there. So it's like, man, if I have a 50-50 shot at like, either I'm getting married and staying married forever, or like this is going to end up in divorce, I think this generation has, one, like you talked about in your sermon series, we have unlimited options available to us via dating apps and all that. If we chose to pursue that. Or there's also just the fear of I don't want to make the wrong choice. Like, what if I do end up in a marriage and we get divorced? I don't want that to happen. So there's fear around that. And then I think too, there's also a fear of I think we've done a really bad job, and not me, I'm not married. But I think even the church has done a bad job at showing what it looks like to not just have a marriage, but having a happy, healthy marriage where it's hey, we actually enjoy being with each other. We actually love being in the same room with each other. We enjoy spending time together. I think that we've just done a bad job at that, which has made I think this generation a little bit more hesitant to do I enter? Do I not? So,
and it's costly.
Yes. Yeah.
Both financially, time-wise. I don't know if we're willing. I think some Gen Zers are we've got that idea of we got careers to chase. We got, got the bag to chase, the bag of money.
Stand on your business.
Yeah. And I think too, it's something that we're making less and less time for and accounting for.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Van, with that, it's kind of part of what we were talking about this morning that you were super fired up about.
Yeah.
I'm going to generalize it, and if you want to bring the plane in, you totally can.
Yeah.
But was kind of surrounding this idea of commitment. I think there's a fear of commitment within Gen Z.
Yep.
So I would you were talking very specifically about Gen Z's engagement with church. But either I would love to hear your take on just the commitment part, or if you want to get into the church part, I'm also down with that.
Yeah. I think the thing that really was on my heart, just even this morning on my way here, and just taking into account the people that I've met and interacted here at church, and specifically our young adult group, is just kind of we have Sunday morning that I'm a part of, and I get, because I work here obviously, but beyond working here, it's a place I love to be. And it's where I get to actually see the ways that God is moving in the lives of so many different people, whether they look like me or my age or not. But I think too, that commitment level of we don't take into account the aspects of every decision, whether it's a job, a church, a relationship. We're not considering the fact that we're excited right now. We're super pumped, super jazzed at the beginning of being presented with an opportunity, and get all gushy and with relationships or whatever. But we're not considering the fact that when those feelings go away, if they're not cultivated, if a heart of gratitude isn't cultivated in the sense of appreciating and being content with what you have, if that's not considered and adjusted in the beginning, it's going to be really hard to sustain any decision, any circumstance or environment, come the winds and the waves, right? Because they're going to come. We don't have to be pessimists and be everything's going to go to crap and it's going to be the worst, But it's it's taking into account okay, I'm not going to want to do this. There are going to be hardships coming. How am I going to be prepared? How am I going to face those things in the face of the joy? And just considering all the factors and not allowing that to necessarily steer you away. Be oh, this is maybe a challenge. It might be a challenge at some point, but preparing for that challenge and knowing is counting the cost, right? And understanding, okay, this decision is going to come at a cost, and am I willing? Do I have a why? Do I have a reason and a driver for the decision that I'm making? And I think a lot of the times we're making it based off of how we feel in the moment, or the fear even, as opposed to understanding and having a little bit more of an oversight to the decision. So I think that's part of it. We're not necessarily always thinking about it with a clear mind. Our minds are either drawn towards fear or just, being super optimistic, unrealistic. But I think, again, asking for God's perspective in that is huge. And, but when it comes to commitment, it's a costly thing, but it's also a worthy investment, right? If you think about it in investments, right? Yep. Of the longevity and the beauty that you get to experience, whether, again, it's a workplace and your coworkers, a church, and the members within it, and seeing God at work there. Like, if you ask for God's perspective and wisdom, the Bible tells us he will not like refuse that request. Like, he's not going to turn it away. Like, but do you want what he wants? Do you want what he sees and how he sees it, or not? And I think that's part of, again, what gets me so fired up is like, we're missing out on the beauty of what commitment could look like if we followed through. Like, if we actually counted the cost beforehand and knew and prepared for the times and the moments where we weren't going to be super excited to do whatever the case, may be, but decided to do it anyhow and saw God move and saw God work it out for his glory and our good. Like, what would happen if we actually just followed through with what God kind of had for us? So yeah, that's a little part of
the man this morning.
So what got you thinking about this in the first place?
I think just conversations with people. I actually met a young man last night at Sanctuary, and I just had so much respect for him because he was telling me how, he comes from a traditional background. He has a deep sense of appreciation for church history and the Reformed theology and the practices and things like that, and liturgy and just, sharing his preferences and worship as well. But he was like, yeah, there's a beauty of the history of the church, and he's like, the depth there as well. But anyway, it just amazed me that he was at Sanctuary. Sanctuary is very different than a traditional service. Yeah. And yet he's still able to see how God is moving and is willing to show up and be present and appreciate the ways that God is moving in the current, contemporary styles of worship. And I think that showed me a lot about his character beyond even just what he was saying. It was like, no, like, I'm willing to be put in uncomfortable circumstances for the sake of seeing God move and seeing the creativity of how our God can be worshiped, and while maintaining my deep love for liturgy and tradition, right? While appreciating that, like, being able to engage with people who are just different or have different perspectives, and again, seeing God working, seeing God at work within it all. So yeah, I think that's kind of where it got sparked. And I was like, why don't we do this more often? Why do we treat church or relationships or jobs? Yes, we have these options, not opportunities, but like, why is it always about what we feel and what we want and how comfortable we are? Like, when is there going to be an eternal perspective here? When is there going to be, okay, God, I know what I want, but like, what do you want? Truly, like, what would you see if you because you already have it all planned out, but like, what do you have in mind for this circumstance? Just asking him and seeing what he will reveal, and like waiting on it too. I think that's something that we're very quick, right? You were mentioning that this morning, like microwave generation.
Yeah. I mean, we expect so often that, like, because this is what I want, this is how it should be.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to learn what it looks like to enter into long suffering in some ways, of being like, hey, this might not be my ideal. And I think Russ and I were talking to the global partners about this, of like, we as young adults kind of have this ideal of like, well, this is what this should look like. And this is how this should be. And, worship should look like this, or, the message should be this, community should be this. And we allow those ideals sometimes to get in the way of like actually like stepping into something that might not look like that. I think about, I'm going to throw my sister under the bus, but I was talking to my sister a couple months back. She's millennial, but she was talking about like, I can't find a church that has worship like this and a message like this, and that still does altar calls, and and I was like, well, dude, if you're looking for the perfect church, you're never going to find it.
No.
And I think that we have these ideals that sometimes keep us away from fully entering in. We're realizing like, hey, I might be unhappy with some things, but how do I still enter in fully into what I'm doing? And even, like that's part of my story with BlackRock. I didn't love BlackRock when I first started coming and kind of interning here. And over time, actually, I was thinking about it when you were talking this morning, Van, about like asking for the Lord's opinion. One of my mentors said, I want you to ask the Lord, what does he find beautiful about BlackRock?
Yeah.
And for 5 weeks, I did that. And I fell in love with BlackRock. And I've been here since I started coming here when I was 17. But I've been like on staff in some way for almost 8 years, going on 9, which is like crazy to me to even think that that's the case. So I think there has to be some willingness to like, hey, I might not like this 100%, but actually like, God, like, where can I put my preferences aside to enter in?
And not to not have any kind of framework or guidelines, like probably shouldn't be a heretical church. It probably shouldn't be someone who doesn't believe in Jesus. Like, we have a framework and we have scripture. We have like the cores and then, the non-essential, the essentials versus the non-essentials. And I think establishing that and seeking God's word, his wisdom, asking him, talking to a wise, mentorship can help create that framework. So then whatever that's within that is free game. And, whether every portion, all the non-essentials kind of line up with our preferences is not necessarily the case, or as necessary, right? It doesn't feel as like, okay, all these different things need to check out in line, as long as like the core, the beliefs that you believe in, are the same and scripturally sound, like.
I even think too, like just jumping. I know a lot of people who are like, well, I'm going to try this church out for like 1 or 2 weeks. And then I'm going to go to this church for 1 or 2 weeks. And then I'm going to, and like, there is part of like, hey, but like you, as we've kind of been talking about this idea, cause we've been talking a little bit all day here and there about it. But just like the idea of like getting to know someone, like, it's like saying, well, I'm going to date this person for 1 or 2 weeks. And then maybe I'm going to date this person for 1 or 2 weeks while still talking to the other person. And then I don't really like these ideals about this person. So I'm going to date this person, but I'm still going to talk to the other person and visit this person on the side. And like, we go to places because they fill part of our need. And I think there are people who are like, well, I'll go to Sanctuary because the worship's really good. But I really prefer the message at this church. But I actually really love the community at this church. And it's like, but you're never getting a well-rounded, wholehearted view of what's happening because you're not actually diving into the committing level of like, hey, I'm going to commit to Sanctuary. Yeah. And for the next year, I'm going to just be a part of the community, try and dive in, be a part of a small group, come every week. And I'm not saying you have to do that at Sanctuary, right? If you want to do that at a different church, do it at a different church. But it's like, there's just a reality of you don't really get to know someone or something unless you've actually spent time getting to know that person or getting to know that thing. So, yeah.
I have a couple comments.
So good.
Yes, Russell.
If I could jump in.
Of course.
First thing is that I've heard this said, and I feel like it's like true just anecdotally from my experience, is that people like church the way they found it. It's like when they come to church, they're like, this is what church is supposed to be. And now I'm going to compare the rest of my life experience to this one thing. So we come in, not just like a Gen Z thing, like, I want church to fill all these different boxes. And it's actually one of the things, I don't know if this is true about Gen Z, but I've heard it, is that you guys are like super highly adaptable. And I think that's just because of all the different changes that have gone on through your lives, with like everything. So if stuff changes around you, you're okay with it. Where like my grandparents, they grew up with like very traditional service, so that when I was a kid, my parents started a church and they wanted to have electric guitar. They were like, no, electric guitars are from the devil. And you can't have drums because they're from the devil too. And that was in the early 90s that we still believed broadly that the electric guitar and the drums were from the devil. But like, so it's like, you like church the way you found it, but Gen Z, it's a bit like you came to church at a time where stuff was changing rapidly. So it seems like you guys are more accepting of just like changes, which is really cool. So going off of that, so that's like something really cool about Gen Z that I believe, but I don't know if it's actually true if you guys feel that way. But I think that's really cool because it just shows that like as time goes on, you guys are going to be great at going with the flow, and maybe you're not married to the way you found church.
Yeah.
I had a pastor in college say this, like he went to like a traditional church and they were singing hymns and he was like, God, I can't worship to these hymns. And then he felt like the Holy Spirit was checking him. He's like, who are you worshiping then? Ooh. Are you worshiping me or are you worshiping you? Because like, who cares what the style is, right?
Come on. That's good.
And so I think we do the same thing now. I've done the same thing now where like I've gone to churches where I'm like, you could tell this person was a hippie because they're playing like this is hippie music, but like they're singing like I thank God, like in hippie style. So I'm like, God, I can't worship to this. And I'll like be like pouty and stuff in there. Like I wanted to worship my way, but like who am I? I'm not different at all from my professor who is just like, I can't worship him. And so it's like, who am I worshiping? But so I wanted to say that in one thing. There's been a couple minutes since I said anything, so I got a lot to cover.
Sorry.
Last thing, no, it's good. You guys had such good stuff. I didn't want to jump in. Last thing, when it comes to like bouncing around to churches, I just think like, man, if you like plug into one church, because if let's say you're going to like 4 different churches, because you like community in one place, the sermon in one place, and even if you're just like online. Let's say like something happens. Like last year, my daughter got super, super sick and I was in the hospital with her for 2 weeks. Who's coming to like help me? Yeah. If like those 4 churches I watched online, nobody even knows I exist, right? So it's like, if I had that happen and I wasn't plugged into BlackRock, like who's coming to help me? And so being a part of community, like being committed like that, it's like they actually knew what was going on. And there were so many people who like reached out to help. And it just made me thankful that I was where I was, like at BlackRock. Just like, but you could have that experience at any church.
Right.
So that's where like I feel like commitment is worth it because they're gonna stand by you when life goes bad, but also like celebrate you when things go good. Like if you have a baby or something, they're like, we're throwing you a baby shower. You're like, all right, let's go. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but that was just like a bunch of my thoughts all collected.
Love that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the charge I would give to you is for young adults, like if you, and this is specifically for people who I think go to Sanctuary. I've just had a lot of conversations with guys. I've had conversations with some of the women in our community who like, they actually long for like, man, I would love to have older believers that pour into me. I was just meeting with someone yesterday, and we were talking about like spiritual fathers, and he looked at me and he was like, so Andres, where would I find those? And I was like, dude, I'm going to be honest with you. It's actually a really obvious answer. And he was like, okay. And I was like, go where the spiritual fathers are. And he was like, well, where's that? I was like, well, there's this thing called Black Rock Church that happens on Sunday mornings. And he was like, you're right. And then I was like, and like, we have a men's thing, a men's gathering that happens every Saturday, every other Saturday. Where there are men here, like that's the perfect place to go. I was like, to be honest with you, there are people where sometimes in morning service, I'll hang back to watch like, who are the men who go up as part of our prayer team? Because those are the people that I'm like, okay, if they're on the prayer team, I'm going to assume that they've gone through some sort of training. They've also kind of been chosen by someone on our staff as men or women who just have some sort of kind of spiritual stature. And those are the people who I want to go to say, hey, I would love to grab coffee with you sometime and just talk more. And I think sometimes we can close ourselves off to like, well, Sanctuary happens at 5:00 and, I don't want to give my whole day to church, but it's like, dude, if it's one day, you're giving your whole day to church, like you're fine. Like it can be a lot. I'm here from 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. and then I come back at 5. But to come for an 11:30 service, stay until 1 or stay until 12:30 and then leave, like, but still getting plugged in with what's happening. There's a call to a broader church body that I think sometimes we miss out on because we just go to Sanctuary. So we miss out on the fullness of like getting to see married couples with kids, getting to see people who have been following Jesus for like 60 years who still show up, and getting invested, and seeing, even for me, sometimes it's going to the 8:30 service and realizing like, man, there are some people who are sitting in this room who have been attending BlackRock for like 70 years, since they were born.
Literally.
If they can be committed to BlackRock and all of its changes, me as a 27-year-old, like how much more do I have like in front of me that I can like stay and like, yeah, sometimes it won't be great or it won't be awesome, but like if there are people who went before me who kind of committed, so can I. So.
And let's just see the image that Jesus gives us, right? Of him in the church. Like he loves his bride. Like you're part of that body, and like he loves you with all your faults, and he loves you enough to grow you and mature you, and that's what he's doing with his church, his big C church. And so I think I like to see it in the sense of a relationship, right? Like you were mentioning, like Jesus doesn't give up on his church. He doesn't turn away when it gets rough or when it gets hard, when it's hard to love us and when we're turning our backs. Like, you know, what would it look like to love Christ's church like he loves it, you know, with that relentless pursuit of, I want to love all of it, and I want to get to know this body, and so that we can lean on each other. And it's funny, like, I don't think that our generation realizes how impactful it is to like spend time with the older generation, like how much they actually feel loved and cared when we do take the time to kind of see where they're at and just check in on them. Like I'm meeting up with a woman right now in her 60s that I met here from I think our women's conference or retreat, and she's like, thank you so much for meeting up with me. I'm like, thank you for meeting up with me. It's just this like 20-minute session of like, I'm so thankful that you take time to spend time with me and get to know my stories. And, you know, like, there's just that beauty of mutually benefiting relationship when it's in Christ. And that's what we get to experience when we kind of dive in and get that commitment. It's like, wow, there are some really cool people with wild stories. And even if you're not relationally wired, like, what does it look like to kind of step out of your comfort zone in that sense and really be blessed by the people around you, but be blessed by the people who are following Jesus? And I mean, what's the risk there?
If
like,
you're at Sanctuary, get out of your box.
Get out of your box, yeah.
All right, yeah. Vanesiah, last thing before we go. There are some people listening to this that are Gen X, boomers, even millennials like me that want to understand and connect with people who are in Gen Z. What's like a tip or some sort of advice that you can give us to better connect with the Gen Z people in our lives?
I think personal asks and personal, like, just, getting very specific and personal with your asks of us, and like to show up and, you know, be very like, take the risk and ask us to show up, ask us to be, to meet with you, or like, you know, I think, we want to be known, we want to be seen. And, I think when people take the time and show us, hey, you're worth the time, you're worth, you know, asking really anything, getting to know you is worth it. I think makes a huge difference and shifts our perspective. Like, oh, you're not just wanting to get to know or pick my brain because I do X, Y, and Z, but like you actually want to get to know me. And I think that shifts our perspective as well. I don't know. That's just for me, but yeah.
No, that's great. That's really good. Vanesiah, thanks for doing this with us today.
Anytime.
All right. To end, we usually like to sing together to say goodbye.
Nice.
Today.
Today.
What would you like to sing in closing? Our farewell song.
We should do. Most people don't know it. The Out of the Box. Not Out of the Box.
Ooh, I know that song. Yeah,
no, not the theme
TV
song.
show.
It's the end.
Out of the box. It's nice to
no.
be together.
No, so long, farewell.
Oh, to you, my friend. So long, farewell until we meet again.
Yeah, it's a jam.
Let's do it. Let's go. Can you pull it up? Wait, can you pull it up, Zach?
He's so fast.
I know.
We hope you liked it too.
Yeah, I think so.
Just begun when suddenly we're through. Woo! Goodbye, goodbye.
This isn't it. No, it's not it.
No. It's
Yeah.
no, it's like they end it.
Farewell.
To you, my friends, goodbye for now until we meet again.
It's so fun.
No,
Isn't it like it's so fun to learn and sing together? Is that how it ends?
no, it's been great to play and sing together in
that's
the box, but now it's time to say goodbye.
See- we didn't even need to sing. Andres could just sing.
Oh,
about
yes. This one, right? Yeah, yeah.
Goodbye, so long.
This isn't it.
Farewell, my friend. Goodbye, so long. Farewell. I know this one.
Keep going.
No.
Keep going. Just keep it going. This is how we'll end right
My
here.
friend, so goodbye, so long. Farewell.
Until we meet again.
Goodbye to John.
That's music together, right? Music class as a nanny.
This? You were
Yeah.
a nanny?
I was a nanny.
Nice.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, is this an EDM?
This is so weird. We can't find it.
No.
It's so
all right.
sad. Anyways,
We could just acapella it.
ready?
Oh,
So long, farewell to you, my friends.
It's my favorite.
Goodbye for now, until we meet again. I say so long, farewell,
The harmony.
yeah, for real.
my friends. Goodbye
Go, Andres.
for now,
Join
I
in.
can't.
until we meet again. It's been great to play and sing together.
In the box.
Now it's time to
Ready?
say goodbye. So farewell to you, my friends.
Andres did the hand motions perfectly right there for those of you listening.
Until we meet again. Goodbye for now.
I sing this at the end of Fusion.
Until we
Do you really?
meet
Yeah.
again.
Wow.
Wow.
Goodbye, friends.
Goodbye.
Bye.